and we are moderators, three moderators, Tetsu Iwata and Kazuhiko Minamatsu and Giles Banashe will serve you. Okay, and each talk will consist of 5 short talk, and we will have a panel discussion and Q&A session after all talks are done. So you can put a question on the Drip chat, not the Zoom chat message, right? Is that fine? Okay. So let's start with the first talk. The first talk is a DARMAC, a TBC-based PRF with smaller state for security and high rate. And the talk will be given by Ike. And, so please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Minamatsu-sensei. This is a short talk that shall present the message authentication code DAFMAC. This is joint work with Tony Koro from our institute and Mridul Nandi from ISI Kolkata. Message authentication codes are, as you probably know, basic cryptographic schemes for authenticating a message where sender and receiver have the same key and can be stateful or randomized, non-spaced, or stateless deterministic, which is the focus of this talk. And most MACs follow there by either a sequential CBC MAC-like design or a parallel design. Tweakable block ciphers are useful not only in this context. In contrast to classical block ciphers, they have an additional public input, a T-bit public tweak, which, for instance, in the context of message authentication codes, are most often useful to have a domain encoded, so therefore to have higher security. But their usage is not only. Do you still hear me? Because I saw John go.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. They're not only useful for separating domains, but at Crypto 2017, if I remember correctly, there was also a good design by Iwata, Minamatsu et al., which was called CMAC, and which offered multiple advantages. It combined high security with high efficiency, where efficiency in this context means that the tweakable block cipher is used to process message material not only in the state, but also in the tweak input, and was additionally highly parallelizable. There's only a single aspect that we found interesting to go further from that design, that it needs relatively much memory. You need not only the message input, but also the tweak input to save. And you also have this accumulator, of course, and you need also both masks to save. So we thought that maybe an obstacle, damn typo, an obstacle for microcontroller or constrained environment implementations. So our motivational question was if we can manage to keep this high rate and that high security of CMAC, but reduce its state size for a more sequential-like design. And we arrived at a sequential design that we called DAFMAC, which also is some kind of hashing and then finalization MAC design. It keeps the high rate of CMAC, where n plus t bits of input are processed by each tweakable block cipher call. So there is an n-bit part which is produced or which is processed by the state, and there is a t-bit part which is processed by the tweak input of the tweakable block cipher. And for every call, there is a feed forward that ensures that both lanes are processed or both lanes are affected after every call. We need some padding function which either pads n-bit output to a larger tweak size for the next call, or otherwise truncates it so that the next input is truncated from n to only t bits. At the end of our design, we noticed that we need a checksum, which is the sum of all tweak inputs, ti, which we found was necessary to achieve high security from our design. Otherwise, you could just tamper a single tweak, and then you would only get birthday bound at best. So we could obtain high security for our design. Our construction is a variant of what Coyote et al. Called hash as tweak, or its generalization hashed and TPC. So you can abstract the hash function away, and then you get an n plus t-bit output that is possessed finally by the same primitive, where you, of course, use the n-bit value as straight input and the t-bit output of the hash function as a tweak input. This design can then, in theory, be easily extended to produce viable outputs. So it's not limited, in theory, to only n-bit output, but you could add a counter and get even longer output. This is n-bit secure if the hash function is optimal and the tweak length is not too short. And while we separate the keys in the hash function and the finalization for an easier proof, a single key version would be, in theory, also be easily obtainable, for instance, by reserving a single tweak bit as a domain bit to separate the primitives. Our analysis in the paper consists then of 3 parts with a relatively easy initial step. The initial step is that we replace the primitives with ideal tweakable permutations, and then we reduce the construction to a hashed and TPC and arrive, or we can use then a relatively straightforward security statement. For this purpose, we need 2 properties from the hash function. One is an upper bound on the collision probability of the hash function, and the second is something we call truncated almost universality, that is an upper bound on the collision probability in only the input x. Can you still see my screen?
It's now black.
Damn it.
Oh.
Sorry, I see also black. I don't know what the monitor is doing.
So you may have already one or few remaining slides. Okay. Yeah, you can just go with just your talk. It may be fine to grasp the idea.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
How can I do that? I'm deeply sorry. I don't see my monitor either.
Now we will see Stripe, but
it may be easier to stop sharing and then try to start sharing again.
I don't see that button. Can you unshare me?
Yes, I believe.
Thank you. Then I can share the first screen. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
And
now you should be able to share again.
Yes, but that time.
Don't worry.
Sorry. And in the paper or in the full presentation, we gave a proof sketch, just the idea for these 2 upper bounds. In the paper, we detailed this a little more. To bound the collision probability, we considered structure graphs. So we defined a number of walks that represent the options of either a single message to produce a collision or a collision between 2 messages. And also for the bound for collisions only in this X output, we also considered this structure graph approach where we considered bad and good walks. And for our collision probability, we arrived at that bound. And for collisions only in the X output, which is used as a tweak in the finalization, it can also happen to have collisions, of course. And we arrived at that bound that has further events to only collide in this X output. In the final bound, we don't need that term twice, of course. So at the end of our security analysis, we arrive at a security bound, which is equivalent to roughly O of n, the minimum of n bit or n plus t half bit security. We implemented our construction with an existing implementation of Skinny, which is an efficient tweakable block cipher for microcontrollers, where we used an AVR implementation as base and implemented it for 2 widespread microcontrollers with the focus on having a low state implementation. As a comparison, we use CMAC in a variant by Naito, which he called CMAC1, which uses the same message processing, the same hash function for message processing, but also hash then TBC as a finalization for better comparison.
So we are running it out of time. So yeah,
I'm fast at the end. Yeah, our code can be found online for the moment at a different link than given in the paper. It will be moved then. We had some organizational issue to move it to the original address. You see that there is still something we can optimize, and we are actively working on further reducing the size of that. For our implementation, we also arrived at a faster one, but that was not at all our goal. In conclusion, we proposed a sequential tweakable block cipher-based MAC with a high rate of CMAC and higher security, but hopefully with a lower state size than CMAC. It could be, in theory or in future work, be easily extendable to have even longer outputs with this approach, and it would be great also to consider a single key version, for instance, by simply having a single tweak bit reserved or a single fixed bit as a domain separator. One final word that I would like to have, simply because I do not want to hide that in the meantime, since our work, there have been more constructions that follow that CMAC approach. That means to process also message material in both the state and the tweak input, for instance, in the paper by Rao et al. And Romulus and ATLR. So these also exist. They have also high security, they're even smaller. And what distinguishes them from our construction is that they need a nonce for high security. Thank you, and sorry for taking too much time.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Eric. Yes. And let's move to the next session, next talk. The next talk is exact security of PMAC with 2 powering up masks. The talk will be given by Yusuke and Aito. So please start.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the exact security of PMAC. The masking scheme uses 3 powering up masks. Firstly, I'd like to announce the revision of our task paper. Our paper considers the PMAC with 2 powering up masks and shows the tight security bound. However, this ePrint paper points out the flaw of our security proof. So in this talk, to obtain the tight security bound, the masking scheme is fixed to the 3 powering up masks, and detail is given in this ePrint paper. So the first PMAC was designed by Black and Logaway, and it is a block cipher-based MAC. And in this talk, the block size is fixed to n bit. And this figure shows the hash, the PMAC. Note that this is a generalization of the original PMAC. And the PMAC has a hash then encrypt structure. The hash function is called phash. And EK and EK prime are keyed block ciphers. And PMAC is a highly efficient, which means red one and parallel. And the efficiency is achieved by the XE structure. Capital M is a message block, and phi of Li is the I secret masking value, which is the n-bit secret L1, L2, and several masking schemes have been proposed, such as Gray code based scheme and powering up masking scheme, which use single secret and have these structures. And for the security of PMAC, since collision of phash becomes the collision of the PMAC, so the hash collision offers the distinguishing attack. So the collision probability of the phash q square over 2 to n is introduced in the lower bound. Q is the number of queries by adversary. And for the upper bound of the pair security, the first bounds are sigma square over 2 to n. Sigma is the number of message blocked by all queries. And these works have improved the upper bound. And max is the maximum number of message blocks by a query, and small q is the number of queries. However, there is a gap between the lower bound and these upper bounds, because these upper bound includes message length, but the lower bound is length free. So Gaji et al. Close this gap using the four-wise independent masking, which use four secrets and show the tight PRF security bound Q square over 2 to N. So an open problem from their work is to find a masking scheme that use 3 or less secrets and has a tight PRF security bound. So this slide shows our result, which solves the open problem. We consider the PMAC with 3 powering ASP masks. The masking scheme has this structure, and which use 3 secrets, L1, L2, L3. And we show that the PMAC has a tight pair security bounds. And in addition to the pair security, the PMAC has a tight MAC security bound. QM is the number of MAC query, and QV is the number of verification queries. And for the security proof, an important point to obtain this tight security bound is to upper bound the collision probability of the p hash for 2 distinct messages, M1, M and M prime, by this length-free bound 1 to N. And to obtain this upper bound, we consider these 2 cases. The first case is that the collision occurs for all inputs. That is, for any input x, there exists another input x prime such that these inputs are equal. And the second case is that some input x is distinct from other inputs. So using these 2 cases, the collision probability is bounded by these 2 cases with case 1 and case 2. And for the probability with case 2, using the randomness of the output y, which is chosen from about 2 to N elements, we obtain the upper bound. And for the bound with the case 1, the case 1 is that collision occurs for all inputs. So in this case, all outputs do not affect the collision probability of the p hash, because the outputs are cancelled out in the aberration of the p hash collision. So the collision probability with the case 1 is bounded by the probability that the case 1 occurs. And to upper bound this probability, we need to consider this input collision for indices I1, I2, I3, I4. And using the structure of the masking scheme, these collisions have these structures. And the structure of masking scheme appear in the left side part. And by using the structure of the masking scheme, we can show that the rank of this system for the variable L1, L2, L3 is 2. And each of the variable is chosen from 2 to N element. And fixing induces I1 and I3, the number of pairs I2 and I4 is at most N max square. So using this result, we obtain the upper bound of this probability. So we obtain the upper bound of the collision probability of the p hash, and using the upper bound, we obtain these tight security bounds. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for Naito-san. Okay, let's move to the next talk. The title is On Beyond the Birthday Bound Security, Revisiting the Development ISO IEC 97971 Max. And talk will be given by Alvin Shen. Yeah, please start.
Okay, thanks for introduction. And my name is Xiaobin Shen, a final year PhD student in STU. Today our talk is on Beyond Bound Security, revising the development of ISO IEC 97971 Max. This is the joint work with Professor Wang. ISO IEC 97971 2011 is the international standard for block cipher-based marks. It specifies 6 single-pass CBC-like marks. Due to the birthday forgery attack for a single-pass CBC-like structure, all marks in this standard are kept at the birthday bound security. In practice, birthday bound security is not always enough, especially when the underlying block cipher has a short block size. So for high-level security that's beyond birthday bound, this standard suggests to use the concatenation combiner of any two single-pass marks. This figure is the concatenation combiner of two marks in as suggested in this standard. However, we reveal the invalidity of this suggestion by presenting a tag on the concatenation combiner of any two marks in this standard. For the concatenation combiner of the two mark X and Y with padding 2, our attack only requires two queries. The attack procedure is as follows. The adversary first query a single block match M to obtain the tag T1 and T2. It then query M XOR T2 to obtain the left half of the tag T3. Thirdly, it query the M XOR T1 to obtain the right half of the tag T4. Finally, the adversary can make a two-block forgery. The first block is M, and the second block is M XOR T1 XOR T2, and the forgery tag is T3 and T4, where T3 can be obtained from the second query. T4 can be obtained from the third query. And this forgery attack succeeds with property 1, and it only requires 3 queries. And for the attack on the combination of any two marks, we will use a multi-collision attack by John for iterated hash function. At first, we only focus on the left half of the combination. By using the multi-collision attack, we can find 2 to the power T messages that colliding to the same value on the right half. We learn such a collision on the right half. Not when the T is greater than half n, then with a high probability, there also exists a collision on the right half. So by using this full collision, we can construct a forgery attack. The complexity of this attack is birthday bound. We then look for patches by revisiting the development of ISO IEC 97971 for beyond birthday bound security. Here we only focus on a single key marks in this standard. We prove that the XOR combiner of the two mark 1 with padding 3 is beyond birthday bound secure. Here is our theory for XMAR1. Note that the XOR combiner is also used in the previous version of this standard. We also prove that the XOR combiner of two mark 5 is beyond birthday bound secure. Sorry, interrupt. 我做报告，我有事。Sorry about that. Our second result is prove that XOR combiner of the mark X5 is also beyond birthday bound security. This is our theory for XMAR5. Here is our conclusion. We show the birthday bound forgery attack on the concatenation combiner of any two marks in this standard. In particular, our attack on the concatenation combiner of two mark algorithm 1 with padding 2 only requires a query. Our attack thus invalidated the suggestion in ISO IEC 97971 2011 that the concatenation combiner cannot be beyond birthday bound secure. Moreover, we look for patches and prove that the XOR combiner can be beyond birthday bound secure. We prove the XOR combiner of two mark 1 is beyond birthday bound with padding 3. We also prove the XOR combiner of the two mark X5 in this standard is beyond birthday bound secure. Okay, that's all. Thanks for your listening. Sorry for interrupt.
No problem. Thank you for your talk. Okay. Then okay.
Okay, thank you for the talk. And now we will move on to the next talk about security of the suffix keyed sponge by Christoph Dubrowning and Bart Mennick. And Bart will give a talk. Please start. We don't hear you.
Yes, then let me start over.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes,
So
please
this
start.
work is about, now you hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. So it's about the suffix key sponge. I wanted to mention that this meme that's here, I literally copied from the internet, so I didn't make it myself. But it was quite a good fit to this talk. So it's about the suffix key sponge or SUX. So I think many of you know the sponge. You take a permutation and you have a message that's absorbed in R bits in the outer part of the state R bits at a time. You evaluate the state with a permutation and in the end you extract. And it's a very popular design for hashing and for lightweight hashing. SHA-3 is based on this. Many lightweight hash function candidates are based on this. But you can do more with this. You can also do keyed hashing. And the simplest way of doing this is by gluing together the key and the plain text. It's called the outer key sponge. An alternative way is the inner key sponge, where the key is set in the inner part of the state. And at some point, people notice that if you do so, the entire state is secret, and you can just as well absorb over the entire state. And this is what we call the full keyed sponge. You can do so without degrading security. But this only holds in the black box model. If you go for leakage, it's a different story. Because once the state is secret, every permutation evaluation might leak certain information. So if you consider the leakage resilience of the sponge, you have a permutation that's repeatedly evaluated on a secret state. And this evaluation may leak information. And the question we ask in this work is, how can we minimize the leakage of the keyed sponge? A simple way of doing this is the #10 design. So you take a hash function. The hash function gets as input a plain text to compute a certain digits, and then you use a keyed function, a PRF or a MAC, to evaluate it to get a tag. And the cool thing of this is that the hash function is unkeyed, so nothing needs to be protected. And F is only applied on a fixed size input. However, if you want to have k-bit security, you need to have a hash digits output of a size 2k bits to avoid collisions faster than 2 to the k evaluations. And this work represents SUX. We consider a generalized depiction of SUX. It takes the normal sponge in the beginning, where the plain text is first padded into R-bit blocks, and they are compressed one block at a time until the last block is compressed. So then we've got a state U. And in this state, we absorb a key, not necessarily with an XOR, but with a function G that will play a role later on, into the S-bit outer part of the state, the S outer bits of the state. So S does not need to be equal to R. Then we make one more permutation evaluation and we truncate to get a T-bit tag. And if you compare SUX to, say, the full keyed sponge, of course, it has the disadvantage that it doesn't do full state absorption, so it's less efficient. On the other hand, the side channel leakage is limited. The only place where we can leak is at the end. And S and T can be arbitrary, and typically you take S and T to be equal to K or C/2, because that determines the security level of the first part. If we compare it to #MAC, it only has advantages. So most notably, the input to the block input to the keyed function is half as harsh. It only needs to be k bits long, so S is k instead of 2k. And G, on top of that, doesn't need to be cryptographically strong. A simple XOR suffices. And if you do so, you have a MAC function that only uses a single primitive P. And in this work, we analyze the security of SUX in two settings. And we prove security if P is a random permutation and G is a function that is good enough, whatever that means. So I would like to refer you to the paper for that. And we prove black box security up to 2 to the minimum of C/2 S and B minus T, where 2 to the C/2 comes from collisions in the hash part. 2 to the S basically comes from an attacker guessing the outer part of V. And 2 to the B minus 2 corresponds to an attacker guessing the truncated part of W. Then we also prove leakage resilience, where every permutation evaluation might leak lambda bits non-adaptively. And we prove a comparable bound with a small loss here in this S, and B minus T becomes B minus T minus lambda. And these are also the only places where secret information is used and might leak. We also applied in the work to ISAP. So as Christoph mentioned in the first part of this day, ISAP is a submission to the NIST lightweight competition, and it uses the suffix key sponge for message authentication. And if you take the ISAP parameters, for instance, the 320-bit ASCON permutation or the 400-bit Kachek permutation, you obtain a bound for SOCs that shows that this mode achieves k-bit security. And it is actually possible to prove leakage resilience of the ISAP authenticated encryption scheme using this result and a result on the key duplex that we presented at AsiaCrypt 2019. That concludes my presentation, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your talk. Okay, so before we move on, if you have questions, please post your questions to the Zulip chat. I still don't see many questions there, so if you have questions, please do so. So the next talk is about efficient side channel secure message authentication with better bounds. The authors are Chungo, François Xavier Standard, Weijia Wang, and Yu, and Chungo will give the talk. So please share your screen and start your presentation. We don't hear you.
So please unmute. Yes.
Can you put in full screen mode?
Is it okay now?
No, we see your many slides, but we don't see it in the full screen.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, it works.
Okay, thank you for the kind introduction. The paper is co-authored with, yes. We'll follow this outline. We know about MAC, but about message authentication scheme. Message authentication scheme has a tag function. Verification function, it outputs accept or reject, indicating the integrity of the message sent here. And if the verification is defined by just a call the tagging function, it is called a message authentication code. It means defined as such. Actually, message authentication codes are more common, but the verification functions that don't call the tagging function might be good for leakage, as we will see. And also they may use IV or nonce or not, or if they don't use, they are called deterministic MAC, or for example, in this paper, the Crypto 17 paper, and about nonce base in this Crypto 16 paper. Yes. Such message authentication could be built from collision-resistant hashing and a block cipher. We just encrypt the hash digest, so it will be very efficient. It can be more efficient by replacing the collision-resistant hashing by universal hashing, and the universal hashing could be built, for example, using the multiplication-based hashing. This is believed to be more efficient than the collision-resistant hashing. And also, they can other variants are such as the Wegman-Carter MAC and something like this. And they can also be built from block ciphers. For example, this is the cipher blockchain mode CBC, and this changes the cause to a block cipher and then the final block would be a message authentication code for all the message. So these are the some common MACs or message authentication schemes. But with side channel attacks, things will be different. The most prominent threat is the differential power analysis. Either would extract the key or the secret once the key is used to process different inputs or different plain texts or different messages. So for example, the CBC MAC, it exactly fits into this case because the block cipher key, the key to the block cipher is never changed, and it is used to encrypt this one. Then we can use the differential power analysis to recover the key. And actually, such an idea allows to break the IoT system in this SP paper of Shamir's group. We can use implementation level side channel protections to eliminate these leakages. For example, use side channel masking, shuffling, and something like this, but this induces severe overheads. For example, the block cipher with n cycles could be the mask of block cipher could cost 10n or even 100n cycles in software. So if we use this technique to mask the CBC MAC, the entire world will become dark. Everything will be masked, and even the users have to be protected. The number of protected executions is linear in the length of the message. It will be very costly. About the universal hashing based MAC, it's the same. While the number of block cipher is only 1, there are the number of multiplications, the field multiplications is linear in the length of the message. And for the universal hashing, the hashing key has to be kept secret. So these multiplications have to be protected, and the number of calls remains to be the linear in the length of the message. So in light of this, let's go back to the plain hashed MAC. This one would be better in this case, because just because the hash is keyless, it might be less efficient, but it is secretless. So we don't need to protect it anymore, and we only need to protect this block cipher. There is only one protected call. So this one turns out to be better in this setting when we have to use side channel protections. Actually, this plain hashed MAC using the collision-resistant hashing has been adopted in a number of leakage-resilient researches. In this paper, leakage-resilient MAC, and this paper, leakage-resilient authenticated encryption. But the verification, if we don't design it carefully, the verification could leak the right tag of forging query, and we can verification query, and we can extract the right tag corresponding to a message we identify, and we could forge by just make maybe 1,000, 2,000 number of queries to the verification oracle. So to resist this kind of attack and reduce the leakage due to the verification, a previously proposed idea is to use the inverse of the block cipher. Instead of defining the verification as just call the tagging function, they will try to compute from the message to the middle and from the tag to the middle using the inverse of the block cipher, and then compare at the middle. So in this way, the verification, even if it leaks, it will leak something pseudo-random, something useless, and the right tag corresponding to the message identified in this verification will not be leaked due to this verification. So it could be more.
So we are running out of time. So can you please quickly summarize your work?
Sorry,
we are running out of time.
sorry, I will. But still, it suffers from bursting attack due to the collision on the hashing. So for this issue, we offer block cipher-based solutions. The first one uses 2 block cipher calls and 2 block cipher keys, and the second one uses 2 block cipher and a single block cipher key. And we call them LRW1 based hashed MAC and Reking based hashed MAC. And their security, we prove the first one is secure to 2n divided by 3 security, and the second one is 2n divided by n security. And about their efficiency, we implemented some demos and tried to see actually these results show they are efficient compared to masked AES CBC, and also compared to ISAP MAC for certain parameters. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you for your talk. And we move on to the next talk.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for my voice. Anyway, the next talk is called Substitution Attacks Against Message Authentication. The authors are Marcel Armour and Bertram Pottering, and Marcel will give the talk. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so hopefully you can see the slides now. This work is substitution attacks against message authentication. So in our work, we introduce a new class of algorithm substitution attack against message authentication schemes. So an algorithm substitution attack replaces a regular scheme's algorithm with a subverted version that aims to reveal information to an adversary whilst remaining undetected by users. So the adversary is typically thought of as engaging in mass surveillance. And prior work in this area looked at subverting encryption schemes. And we kind of take that idea and apply it to symmetric message authentication protocols. And I think one of the main contributions of our work is to think about the implications of subverting the receiver rather than the sender. So in previous work, people considered subverting the sender algorithm, but we think about the receiver, and we provide some powerful generic attacks against message authentication schemes, inducing only a negligible implementation overhead. So very briefly, an algorithm substitution attack, as I've said, replaces a cryptographic scheme with a version that is that deviates slightly, but should recreate all of the functionality. But the ways in which it deviates should allow an adversary to be able to learn something. And typically, what you would like to do is to leak the secret key, because then the cryptographic scheme is compromised. So here's a diagram to show the example of encryption schemes. So if the encryption algorithm is subverted, these ciphertexts, they would still have to be genuine, kind of correct ciphertexts, so they decrypt, but they have some kind of deviant behavior that an adversary can note and learn some information from. And prior approaches use the technique of rejection sampling to do that. So for any randomness, you obtain a valid ciphertext when you encrypt a message under that. So by re-choosing or resampling the randomness, you can obtain a ciphertext that has some special format. So in other words, create a subliminal channel. So in our work, we noticed that for symmetric cryptography, both the sender and the receiver share a cryptographic key. So instead of targeting the sender, you could target the receiver in order to leak the key. And secondly, rejection sampling as a technique is not realistic in practice, as most practical encryption schemes and also MAC schemes are deterministic. So they might be completely deterministic, or they might use a nonce, which is normally implemented via a counter. So in a sense, you can't just resample randomness. And in our work, we subvert the verification algorithm of a message authentication scheme such that one bit of information is leaked through bogus acceptance or rejection. And here's a diagram. So we have a sender is sending message tag pairs where the tag is computed with the secret key. And then the verification algorithm has been subverted so that it accepts or rejects slightly differently from what it should, and that will leak some information to an observer. And we do that in two different ways. So we have two different independent approaches, thinking about a passive adversary and also an active adversary who can intercept and modify message tag pairs. And our attacks effectively leak the secret key. And once the secret key is known, then any tag can be forged. And then I have a nice diagram to show essentially with more message tag pairs that are observed, the secret key can be reconstructed. or learned, I suppose. Yeah, and that's it. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice talk. So the next talk is titled New Conditional Cube Attacks on Ketchak Keyed Modes. The authors are Zheng Ling, Xiaoyang Dong, Wenquan Bi, Keting Ya, Jiaoyong Wang, and Willy Meyer. And Zheng will give the talk. So the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you for the instruction. I'm going to talk about our work entitled New Conditional Cube Attack on Ketchak Keyed Modes. In Ketchak Keyed Modes, we focus on the internal permutation, the Ketchak P permutation. We have reduced the time complexity of key recovery attacks. In cube attacks, conditional cube attacks, it is crucial to search for variables. To summarize, conditional cube attacks on Ketchak MAC 512 previous works, there are not enough cube variables to perform 7-round attack, where our work can reach 7-round attack. In previous conditional cube attacks, in the first round, the 64 variables do not multiply with each other. In the second round, if the bit conditions are satisfied, V0 do not multiply with others. In the second round, the 64-dimension product will disappear in the output of the 7 round. If bit conditions are not satisfied, the 64-dimension product will appear in the output of the 7 round. In our work, after the first round, V0, V1 is the unique quadratic term. If the bit conditions are satisfied, V0, V1 does not multiply with others in the second round. The 65-dimension product will disappear in the output of 7 rounds. If bit conditions are not satisfied, the product will appear in the output of 7 rounds. We call V0, V1 as kernel quadratic term. V0, V1 is generated in the K operation of the first round. We choose the case that V0, V1 are in the same column, so it does not diffuse even after the set operation of the second round. In 2 to 22 pattern, after pi operation in the second round, there are 22 bits contains V0. However, we care about the diffusion of V0, V1. So it only exists in 2 bits after pi operation in the second round. As in the unique nonlinear operation, K operation, only neighboring bits multiply with each other. So the new 622 pattern provides more space to search for cube variables. We also use MRLP method to solve the problem to search variables. The time complexity is mainly the computation of cube sums. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So let's have a look at the questions. So I will read the first one, but then I propose other moderators read them because of my voice. Sorry about that. So first question is from Damien about the suffix key sponge. Do you think that the same construction you analyze in the paper would be also secure against adaptive leakage? And if yes, would there be a quantitative degradation?
Yes, you can analyze it, but it would be trivially insecure. So it's a quantitative degradation. The reason is that the attacker can basically make the same permutation call or the same construction call, but then with different leakage on the keying function. And then it leaks, for instance, lambda bits at a time of the same key. So after a sufficient number of operations, or in this case, a subkey, after a sufficient number of operations, you can actually retrieve the subkey. And this is like S, which is A equal to K typically, divided by lambda bits. So the same message goes in and then different leakages, and that would be adaptive leakage. And this is a really strong setting. And I think that non-adaptive security, non-adaptive leakage resilience more accurately captures the setting. And in this case, lambda is not how many bits an attacker gets in one evaluation, but it serves as an upper bound on how many bits the attacker gets over the entire game for this specific state. So in short, in non-adaptive security, I think it's reasonable. Adaptive security is a too strong model.
Okay, so yeah, the next question is from myself to use case talk. So yeah, I wonder, yeah, if you have ideas on, you show the PMAC based construction that you the 3 masks. So my question is simply, yeah, do you have ideas on the possibility or impossibility of using just 2 masks to get the same level of security?
I have no idea to obtain the type technique.
No idea. Yeah. Okay. In terms of the entropy, yeah, 2 masks is sufficient naively, I think. But yeah, I understand that the construction may be difficult.
Yes. I think there's no attack to the even single masking, single firing up mask. So probably we can prove the type security, we can obtain the type security part for the 2 firing up mask, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you. So the next question. It may be handled by Tetsu. From Bart to Chun.
Okay, I have a question to Chun first. So we have a question from Bart, and he's asking, #10 weak PRF is known to behave like a secure PRF. And wouldn't your result also follow if you simply prove that the 2 TBC calls that you consider LRW1 and the other one behave like weak PRFs?
PRF? Sorry, I will try to fix.
We don't hear you.
I will try to solve
we hear you.
the issue about it. Okay, is it okay now?
Yes.
Sorry about the device. LRW1 weak PRF. Weak PRF.
Weak PRF is PRF that is secure against known.
So weak PRF is a PRF that is secure under the assumption that the inputs are random and non-adaptively selected, basically.
The clarification about this, I have to say I really didn't spend a lot of time on this direction. Didn't consider this. But,
because if I look at the paper, you seem to prove the entire construction, right? But I would say that if you prove that the Trico block cipher behaves like a PRF under the assumption that the input is random, that's exactly weak PRF security. It's the proof. So I don't know if the proof actually does this implicitly. I was wondering.
Well, I got the point. Maybe this approach will not work for this construction. Let me elaborate. Let me elaborate, because the reason is, as we see, because we use the trick of comparing at the middle to reduce the number of the amount of leakages during verification. So I'm not sure if the weak PRF trick will work here. And also in the proof, we assume that the intermediate values here will be leaked. If this intermediate value is leaked, also this one, also this value and this value. If these intermediate values are completely leaked, is it possible to establish beyond birthday weak PRF security for the LRW1 tweakable block cipher?
Okay, I see the point. Yes, so you actually, because you have to take into account the leakage, you did it like this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for question.
Maybe I can ask one more question to Jun. So your analysis, in your analysis, the hash function is modeled as a random oracle.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can reduce it to a weak hash function, like a collision-resistant hash function.
Thank you for the question. It appears a simple collision resistance assumption would not be sufficient, because it uses a lot of complicated combinatorial properties. So for example, for this one, to establish, do you see the screen? Sorry. For example, for this one, to establish the asymptotically optimal security, we will have to show that the probability of n collision, here at this value, the probability of n collision at this value would be sufficiently small. And this property, I guess it is
More than collision
not a very
resistance.
standard function.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So
Thank you.
we move to other questions. Anyone? So maybe I can ask to Yao Bin. So your analysis shows security bounds, and I wonder the tightness of your security bounds. Do you have matching attacks, or do you expect you can further improve the security bound?
Yeah, I think our bound is not tight, because this work is published in last year, and I think there are several works. There's a generated attack by Lauren et al. They propose a 3N device for complexity attack for this double block hash rate sum. I think they have an unlearn for our EXO combiner, and then they have proposed attack for this construction. And also recently, the Jungyang Li, they also proved a tight bound for this kind of structure. So I think our bound is not tight, and there's a hope to prove that they also can achieve the 3M device for this security. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you for your question.
Is there any other question? We have still 10 minutes more, maybe around 10 minutes.
Maybe I have a quick question to Marcel about the substitution attack. So in practice, what happens if the MAC is incorrect? I mean, in protocols, does it happen, for instance, that the entire session is closed? And in this case, the attack you propose, is that still working, or is that an obstacle for your attack to work?
That's a good question. So you're right, if you tear down the session, then our attack isn't able to work. But we sort of assume that, so we assume a scenario where you have maybe like a lower level protocol that will ask a retransmission. So then you can observe that, and the protocol should then just continue as normal. But you're right, if the session ends, then we can't do anything.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe then also a question to Zheng about the attack on Keccak key modes. So in your attack, the attack on KMAC reaches 9 rounds, whereas on the other instances it's only 7 rounds. Can you maybe give some intuition why you have 2 more rounds on KMAC than on the other instances?
The complexity of KMAC is longer than Keccak MAC, and it can compute reverse 1 round, so there's 2 rounds longer than Keccak MAC. That's all.
Okay, so you have more degrees of freedom.
Yeah, they have more degree of freedom, and it can compute reverse 1 round, so 2 rounds longer.
Okay, then maybe like a personally interested question. So the ingredients you have been using are the low degree of the round function, the degree 2, and some kernel effects. And these ingredients are also present in the Zudo permutation. So have you thought about trying your attack on, let's say, Zodiac, for instance, or Zoof?
For what? I didn't understand.
So just asking if you tried a similar attack on the Zudo permutation instead of the Keccak permutation, starting from the point of view that the same kind of ingredients are also present in this permutation.
We can also perform similar attacks on other versions. They are not in this paper.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other question? So I have one question to Ike. Ike, okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Could you show your slides over the microcontroller implementation? I didn't get the summary of your implementation results. So yeah, because it's too fast for me.
Oh, sorry.
But anyway, it shows that the DAPMAC is more efficient. It simply shows better efficiency, not only in the memory, right?
Yeah, but the focus was to have a lower memory of it only in comparison to CMake. Everything else was just a side effect, and yep.
Just a side effect, okay. But in that case, let's say about if we take a bit more powerful microcontroller like the Cortex M3 or M4, then there may be a possibility to use some small parallelism, say 2 blocks or 4 blocks or so. Then the result would be, yeah, changes. Is that correct?
Most probably we didn't try this.
Yeah.
We really tried to focus on the smallest ones, and my co-author still would like to further reduce this. So there is this is not the last date. I know that there are even smaller constructions, which is great, and so there is the hope to even further reduce this, and we got also good comments by the reviewers in this regard. But to answer your question, yes, the situation may change, maybe in favor of CMAC than on other microcontrollers, in speed in particular.
Okay, maybe I can ask a question to Bart. I'm looking at your security bound, and you have 3 terms in the black box one. And what I see is that the second one related to attacking the G function is the dominant term. And this is the case for both the blocks, for the 400 permutation case and 320 permutation case. In both cases, the second term is the dominant one. And I wonder if this, I think this also gives the optimal attack. So when we want to attack it, attacking the G function part would be the optimal attack. I wonder if this is the case for other parameters as well. I mean, for these 2 parameters, I see this G part is dominant, but I wonder if this is the general security of this construction.
Yes, so I think it also depends on the type of construction. So if this is a slide from the extended presentation that I'm sharing right now, where we take the Kashuk 400 permutation or the ASCON 320 permutation, and in that case you actually get indeed the dominant term is in this case basically the second and the first, because that's how we selected these parameters. And the tag is k bits, and that's also how we get here this 2 to the power 272, because that's 400 bit permutation and you truncate up to 128 bits, so you get 2 to the 72. So the third term doesn't matter here anymore. But if you go to the second one, the third term gets bigger. So it really depends on the size of the permutation that you take, which one is dominant. But for the specific case of ISAP, you take the capacity to be equal to twice the key. And this means the first and the second term give comparable security bound. Now, for the second and the third term, you have this multi-collision term nu, which could give additional power to an attacker. So if an attacker gets a multi-collision in the outer part of U, or a multi-collision in the inner part of U, or the outer part of W, it can accelerate its attack. And this gives a slight bias of the second term compared to the first one. But it really depends on the parameters, which term is dominant.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't think we have more questions on the Zulip.
Yeah, no more questions here. Zulip.
So I think we close this session now, and thank